Hello and welcome. This is a meeting of the Foxborough Personnel Board. We are televised live on Foxborough Cable Access, as well that you can access either on your TV or the internet. So I'm going to call the meeting to order. It's 5:30 on Tuesday, August 30th. The first item on our agenda is to review and approve the meeting minutes from June 21st. Do I have a motion to approve, or are there any changes?
I think they're fine. I make a motion to approve.
Great. A second?
I'll second.
Everybody in favor? And we've got to do a roll call because we're Zooming.
Yes, in favor.
Approve.
Aye.
Aye. Tracy says aye.
Aye.
Okay. Moving on. Discuss the mobile phone policy. So Mike Johns, there we go.
Yes.
You had sent out a form that is I think the cell phone policy that you're proposing that would be signed by an employee. And then I had asked a question about, I swore that there was already a cell phone policy that we had worked with Mary Beth on. And then what you pulled up was a paragraph related to cell phone usage within the vehicle use policy.
That's correct.
We didn't have a separate one?
No, we didn't.
Okay. So if we do this one, which is the new one, sorry, does it override the other one?
That's not the intention for it to override or replace it, because we still want to have something either in the vehicle use policy or referring from that one to this one. I will say that the vehicle use policy is one of the policies that's already been negotiated, impact bargained with all of the unions. So if we don't have to change the old vehicle use policy, that would be good. But if there is good reason to change it, then I'll go back and impact bargain it with the unions. I did briefly discuss this with Jack yesterday. I probably haven't given him enough time to review this in depth. But if you have anything, Jack, please chime in.
I actually had one thing. In the one that you sent us from the vehicle use, it says in the event of exigent circumstances, employees are expected to keep the call short, use hands-free options if available. Then it says in this, the town of Foxborough has a zero tolerance policy regarding a cell phone while driving, unless it is configured in the vehicle and used in a completely hands-free manner in accordance with Massachusetts state law. So they conflict.
That's why I said I thought it was a little bit confusing, and that I was glad we were going to chat about it today. It's just a little bit conflicting, I think.
Oh, it's very conflicting. Like, I personally think that in the thing you sent us in the email, in the event of exigent, I can't say that word, circumstances, employees are expected to keep the call short, blah, 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 blah. I think that whole last two sentences needs to be struck.
That was actually the focus of my brief conversation with Mike.
Channeling my inner attorney, no.
Since that policy was adopted, Massachusetts law has changed, and obviously we want to make sure that policies continue to be consistent with state law. I think the proposed new policy is better at that. So I think it'd be wise to try and modify the existing vehicle use policy so that it conforms with the proposed new policy and state law.
I agree. Scott, Linda. Now I'm calling you.
That makes sense.
I'm renaming you, Nancy, to Linda for some reason.
Oh, I didn't know that was me. Okay. No,
that's your code name.
I didn't examine the new thing with a fine tooth comb, but I just did yesterday go to mass.gov, and I was looking up the laws in Massachusetts about using a cell phone in the car.
Yeah, you can't do it unless it's hands-free.
Right, and I didn't know if it made sense to say that we have the law in the state, and to even spell out what the offenses are in the state of Massachusetts. I don't know if you think it's appropriate or worthwhile to include what the actual penalties are in the state, or if we should just keep that separate.
I think we should keep it separate because it very much could change, and then we'd have to redo the policy.
That's true.
What Jack has advised us in the past on these policies is if we have a federal act or a state law, to refer to that law within the policy, give the link. So then as the law or the mandate changes or the act changes, we're still up to date on our policy.
Yeah, I think that's great.
And this is a good example of that happening. So,
Mhm.
Yep.
Mhm.
Scott, Mike, Brown, any thoughts or comments?
No, I have no further comments. I agree it was a conflict. I think it's a good fix.
I agree.
The one thing that the one with the seal at the top, Mike Johns, is the reimbursement rate for authorized employee-owned cell phones is net $40 per month. Does there anything to need to be put in here about that? They'll only be reimbursed upon approval by the person's manager.
Yeah, I think that's worth putting in there. That's a good point.
And can it be approved by just the person's manager, or does it also have to be approved by the town manager or anybody in HR, or is it just the person's line manager?
I think it's just the person's direct manager. It's only $40. It's not like a huge expenditure. I'd be fine with the person's, unless Mike Johns wants to approve all of them.
Just to keep internal equity, like who has the eligibility for a phone and who doesn't have eligibility for a phone.
Yeah, we can put in there that department head and town manager. So at least the town manager is seeing where all those phone expenses are going.
Okay.
Or even the HR, like even you, Mike, assistant town manager, whatever. I don't know. I just thought somebody who's looking at the whole pie as opposed to just one slice of the pie.
I think that's a good point. And then my only other thing was, it is the town of Foxborough's policy that representatives of our organization who are issued a cell phone understand the phones are issued for official town use only. I know it's a nit, but
that's the intent. With the difference with ones that are issued, those are for business use, whereas the ones who are getting a stipend, that's their personal phone, and that could be, the stipend is to reimburse some of the business use on their personal phone.
Yeah, so I'm saying the ones that are issued by the town are only for official town use. So it's the third statement under policy.
Right. That's my understanding, but I will go back and verify that because to be honest with you, the need for this policy being written came at me a little late in the.
Okay, no worries. It was just not my thought.
And the reason that this came up was really focused on the reimbursement part.
Okay.
And so that was kind of my focus, was to get that in there. And it came at me fast because they're trying to get this policy discussion in front of the Board of Selectmen a week from today. Okay. So I wanted this board to see it first. Okay. But I will check that though, as far as if an issued phone can be used for personal use.
No. What I'm saying is it's the town of Foxborough's policy that representatives of our organization who are issued a cellular phone understand the phones are issued for official town use only. It's the third sentence down, Mike, in the policy. I think you got to put the word only at the end of that sentence.
Oh, I see. Yep.
Okay.
I'm in agreement. I was not following. I'm with you now.
Yeah, I was not being very clear. I apologize.
No, I wasn't hearing well. We'll put that in. That makes sense.
Okay. Any other changes from the board? Recommended changes, questions?
Like, the folks use their own personal, this kind of goes across a couple policies. Do they use their own personal equipment to access town files, documents, intranet, things
Yeah,
of that nature?
Yeah, we did that.
It kind of crosses a few of these policies, and I don't know how the town treats this type of, so
Yeah.
maybe just a general statement for me so I can understand.
Yeah, didn't we do that in the social media policy or something?
That's
Mike,
under
Mary
computer
Beth?
use policy.
Computer use, yeah.
Yeah, we talked about it in the computer use policy that we didn't want people downloading, official business or town files onto their personal devices. And so to answer your question, Mike, there are people, including myself, who have their personal cell phones and getting a $40 reimbursement for it, that are having email forwarded to it, but not downloading files to them.
What about from their home MacBook? That's in the computer use policy, right?
Right, and that's the same thing there. So they are not supposed to be, in accordance with our computer use policy, they're not supposed to be downloading files to those devices. They can use VPN to use that their own computer to access work files and do work, but not download onto those devices. And that would keep the separation between their personal device and the work files and confidential information, as long as they're not downloading to it.
And the chances
So
that-
are they prohibited, Mike? Are they prohibited from downloading, or is that like they should? They're being told they shouldn't.
They're prohibited from it in our computer use policy.
Technically prohibited. Okay,
Yes.
that's good. All right.
No. They could download. Like technically they could download it, but the policy is they cannot. Correct?
You are correct. The policy is prohibiting them from doing it.
But technically, Mike Brown, no, they can do it technically.
Okay. All right. That raises the risk level a little bit.
Could you send out, Katie, the policy that covers this to the board after the meeting?
That went into the personnel guide that I believe that was sent out to all employees, right, as well as put on the website.
Yeah, you're wanting it to be sent out to the personnel board, right?
Yes.
Is that what you're
please.
asking?
Yeah.
Oh, sure. Oh my gosh, yes, of course.
Yeah, sorry. No, I'm not being very clear today in any of my calls. And that, Mike, will give you an opportunity to look at the whole thing. And if you still have concerns, we can raise it.
Okay. I'm used
Okay.
to a pretty restrictive sort of set of processes in corporate America, and this may be quite different. But in any respect, that's where my question's coming from.
Awesome. Do I have a motion to make a recommendation on the cellular town of Foxborough cellular phone policy as discussed and amended?
Yep, motion to recommend to the Board of Selectmen, correct?
Mhm.
I'll make a motion to recommend to them.
Thank you. Second. Great. Everyone in favor, roll call.
Yeah. All right.
Aye.
Nancy, I.
Tracy, I. Okay. Next one is social media policy. Did I miss this? Because I
No.
printed out.
I think we're all set on the social media policy. That's something that I don't think we're missing anything there. That's something that you had reviewed before.
Okay. I mean, Jack, is there any updates needed, or you and Mike John's feeling good?
Yeah, we're not proposing any updates at this point that I'm aware of.
Okay.
Mike, can I ask one quick question though? On part 3B, it says this section describes acceptable and unacceptable use of all social media, but it's only like 3 lines, and is it referring to the whole section, general provisions, or I was confused by that.
I'll take a look at that. I don't have that one sitting in front of me.
Yeah, I had two questions. One was that, and the second one was in Part D. It says all use of social media must conform to the following regulations. And the first line is there is no guarantee of privacy for electronic communications. And I assume you're meaning through the town systems, but
Yes.
and not generally. But it's just a clarification, maybe.
Okay, I'll take a look at that.
Thanks.
Oh, is it fine to me?
Okay. Discuss non-union vacation, longevity, and stipends. Mike, do you want to give us a overview?
Yes.
This one's kind of a lengthy one.
Sure. Let me start from several years back. Before we had a steelworkers union, we had a non-union personnel bylaw, and that covered about 70 employees. It was probably, I don't know, maybe 9 or 10 years ago that the steelworkers organized about 55 of those 70 employees. They became units A and B of the steelworkers. And I mention that because much of the steelworkers contract came from what had originally been the non-union bylaws. That became their steelworker unit A and B contracts. So every 3 years, they negotiate a new contract. So most recently, to town meeting, both of those unions got a contract ratified and then settled at town meeting. And I summarized the changes that went into their contract, where we typically try to keep our 15 non-union employees in parity with those steelworkers, because generally they're administrative office workers, some supervisory, some non-supervisory, working in most of the same buildings, town hall, council on aging, and so forth, DPW. So we try to keep some parity. That's the goal. A couple of areas that were changed in the steelworkers contract, I summarized. One was that their longevity payments went up by $25 for each of the different levels, for people who have served for more than 5 years for the town. That was one area. Another area was that Unit A employees who are eligible for a certification stipend that used to be $1,000. So that would be something like somebody got their mass assessors accreditation, and they were getting $1,000. That went up by $100. Or somebody who got their town clerk's state certification or
So this is a $100 increase per year.
Yes, that should have said increase. So it was a $100 increase. So that's $1,100 for that stipend. There are a couple of people in the non-union that get $1,000 stipend. The treasurer collector is one. And I think there are two others. But anyways, theirs is still at $1,000. So what I'm recommending is that you consider raising that stipend, from $1,000 up to $1,100 to keep them in parity with the steelworkers. And then there was a third area of vacation that splits into two other areas. One is we made the move this year during negotiations to bring the minimum vacation up to 3 weeks. And that was for two reasons. We have seen that we're not as competitive as we used to be in many areas, and one of them is with vacation. We're seeing a lot of places starting a minimum vacation of 3 weeks, and we've been at 2 weeks. So that was one reason that we negotiated 3 weeks with the union. The other one was that it was a lower cost alternative to get a settled contract than throwing money into other areas, such as raising the pay chart. So we changed that to 3 weeks for the first 4 years, And then for 5 years and beyond, we didn't change it at all. So they stay at the 3 weeks, even into years 5, and then go up as it did before. So that's one area that I'm suggesting that you at least look at. Do we want to take the 15 non-union employees, and for any, I think it touches a couple of people now. Most of those 15 are already over 3 weeks vacation at this point because of their seniority, but we have a couple who are not at 5 years yet, and they're getting 2 weeks vacation, whereas their co-workers who are in Steelworkers A and B are starting at a minimum of 3 weeks vacation. And that would also apply to new hires currently for Steelworkers A and B. And what I'm recommending, if you recommend adopting this and sending it to the selectmen with a recommendation to also make that applicable to new hires in any of these 15 non-union positions. And then the last area that also touches on vacation is for employees who are already at 3 weeks vacation. We gave them 1 week of extra vacation in fiscal year 23, which is this current fiscal year only, to be used within this fiscal year, having no monetary value. In other words, if they leave during this year, they can't cash that out, they lose it. So they use it within this year, and it can't transfer over into next year. So that's what we did with Workers Unit A and B. And I'm recommending that you at least consider or discuss that for our non-union, 15 personnel. I did include in the email that I sent to you that number 1, longevity, I would fall under that category. And number 4, the vacation, because I already get over 3 weeks vacation, that would apply to me. I would like to take myself out of the running for that $25 longevity increase. And for the extra 1 week of no cash value vacation, I'd like to take myself out of the running for that, and I would present that to the town manager and the selectmen as well, because I don't want my recommendation to you and to the selectmen to be tainted by a personal gain in that. So does that all make sense? Those different levels of parity that I'm suggesting.
I have a question.
Go ahead, Dan.
Just about the extra week that you're going to give to people just for this year. The reason for that, I'm guessing, is because they didn't get that week when they were first hired. Is that why?
That's part of it.
Mm-hmm.
The other part, really the bigger part, is that we were giving something to folks who had less than 5 years with the organization in Steelworkers A and B, and nothing for the folks who had been here 5 years or more. And so the union came back with they did not accept that proposal with my attempt to try to settle this contract. They said what would settle the contract is if you would consider at least giving something to the rest, which was most of the steelworker employees having more than 5 years, if you would give them something like an extra week vacation. And I said, well, we would not be willing to take someone who's already getting 3 weeks or 4 weeks and bump them up an extra week, for forever. And we also wouldn't be willing to allow them to cash that out if they were to leave within the next year. So that's where we settled on that. So that was really the main reason, was because we couldn't settle the contract without doing something with the rest of those employees.
So first of all, go ahead, Nancy.
I'm sorry, I keep dominating. Just wondering, what are other towns doing as far as vacation? And
They're at 3 weeks.
Okay.
Yeah, we are very behind from a vacation standpoint.
Okay.
Couple things, Mike. First, I will not accept your taking yourself out of this. So, because you are part of this group of 15 people, and if our recommendation to the selectmen is that we recommend this and support it, then you're part of that group. And if you would like me or Gary to be present at the selectmen's meeting to speak to that point, just let me know. Then could these 15 people be in a union if they wanted to, or do they not qualify for whatever reason?
Some of them could be, some of them could not. So I couldn't join a union because of the nature of my work. The treasurer collector could, well, that one actually could.
It's okay. You don't have to go through them, but some could, some can't.
Some could. There are probably more that could than couldn't.
Okay. And then do we have a sense of, so the maximum impact on the budget from a longevity standpoint, if you take 25 times 15, that's $375. I mean,
that's it.
That's a drop in the bucket. And I'm assuming not everybody is in excess of 5 years, or of the 15. How many do you think are?
There are only, this would only the vacation thing with the 5 weeks,
No.
you mean?
No, the longevity, number one. The 25 per year increase. How many?
That would, so the majority are in excess of 5
Okay.
years. There are, I can think of 3 who would not be eligible.
Okay. So we're talking like $300 total.
Right.
Now the certification stipend, do you know approximately how many of the 15 would
3.
qualify for that?
That would be 3. So it'd be $300, the increase.
Okay. Those are my questions. Scott, Nancy?
Mike, I assume the last time they went through the contract ratification 3 years ago or so, we took a similar approach. There were some changes that the union made in their contract, and we applied those to the non-union.
We did.
Yeah. Okay. I mean, these are very small changes. I have no issues with any of them, and they're in lockstep with the union contract.
Yeah. And we've worked pretty hard to keep parity as much as we can. Even though police and fire are different, we've tried to keep some parity across public safety, and then across the DPW. And, between the unions, they're always looking at each other. So while we can't make them exactly even, we try to make the total package something that's of equal value. And then we have tried historically to do the same with our non-union personnel, is to treat them somewhat equally as much as we can.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Mike Brown?
No, I think it's all reasonable. I mean, Tracy, I'm sorry. I'm in support.
Okay, Nancy, are you good?
Yeah. And I do think it's good to know, what other towns are doing, what the market is doing for these types of positions, and, just to make sure that we're competitive, that we're on par. I think it's good.
Okay, so I'll entertain a motion to recommend to the Board of Selectmen that the longevity is increased by $25 a year for employees serving full-time in excess of 5 years, that the certification stipend is increased by $100 per year for certain Unit A employees, but I'm assuming it's within the group of 15. Vacation upon hire will increase that to increase that to 3 weeks per year for years 1 through 4, and no change to 5 or above. And that will also be applicable for any new hires. And then vacation for employees who have already reached 3 weeks, we recommend crediting them a one-time 1 week vacation in fiscal year 2023 to be used in fiscal year 2023 with no cash or transfer value, and that you do not recuse yourself from these changes. Do I have a motion?
Motion.
Yep.
Okay, second.
Second.
Okay, roll call by name.
Scott, aye.
Mike Brown, aye.
Nancy, aye.
Tracy, aye. So Mike Johns, just let me know if you want me at the selectmen's meeting, or if you want me to send an email or whatever you need.
Okay.
And it was very gracious of you to attempt to recuse yourself on that one. But no doubt.
I don't know if it was so much gracious. I just didn't want to present a conflict of interest. That's all.
Well, here's the thing. You were very upfront about it. So, and we wouldn't think that. Okay. The last thing on the agenda is the ADA policy. Mike, do you want to kind of give us?
Sure. So we're going through two things, as I've mentioned in my email to you, but so the public also hears it. The one thing is that the town is applying for an ADA grant, and the town planner or land use director is working on that now. That's something that she's looking to submit by the end of September. Parallel to that, the many of the departments in the town are working on the open space and recreation plan, not the least of which is the land use director, a conservation agent, the recreation board, human resources department, to get this ready, and that would be by the end of the calendar year. So there are about 9 different requirements that have fallen on me to get ready to do both the OSRP, the Open Space Recreation Plan, and this ADA grant. And one of them I've presented to you, and that is a public notice where somebody can appeal or make a grievance procedure on ADA. And that touches on many different areas, which include, hiring, which include inaccessible curb cuts, building accessibility to public buildings. So you'll see when you look at this notice that we'll put up on the website, that most of this falls onto the building commissioner, and that's the way that it's handled in the vast number of communities that have adopted this policy. That most touches the HR director, just in that if there is a grievance that is submitted, that the HR director may be involved in the investigation, along with the building commissioner in looking into the grievance, and then it can be appealed up to the town manager, and then it can go as far as going up to the MOD or the Massachusetts Office on Disability, or taken up to the MCAD or Massachusetts Commission Against Disability. So that's what you have in front of you. I've adopted this, or plagiarized, if you will, this grievance procedure from exactly what the state uses. So the only thing I've done is just change the state emblem to the town seal, and change the names and the contact information to the appropriate people in here. Otherwise, I've not modified the language in any way, so that I've kept it in what's legally been adopted by the state and other communities who have adopted this grievance procedure.
So this is just for employees. You say curb cut, and I'm like, what if somebody's trying to get in the town hall? But this is for employees of the town.
No, this is not just for employees. Oh. This is for anyone in the community.
Okay.
Mike, sorry, Tracy, if you had one. My question on this one, so it all makes sense what's in paper here, but we have a building commissioner reviewing it, and that makes a lot of sense to me on cuts and building entrances and the like ADA type things. But you also mentioned like hiring, discrimination and those kind of things. Is this the place that other towns deal with it, or should it be more of a HR director or a town manager type, or yourself? Is there a way to get clarity to the right people on this thing? I don't know, Scott, at all. Myself personally, I'm just asking from a positional type question. Is the building commissioner the right person to be broadly opining on these type matters? Because it looks like it's in his sole discretion.
That's
I-
okay.
Sort of a
That's a
complaint.
really good point. And Scott Shipley is amazing at
Mhm.
Shippey at what he does. But
Mhm.
I mean, I can't, if there's an issue of discrimination upon hiring, to Mike's point,
Yeah.
I mean, Scott is not the person to do it. I think it should be the assistant town manager or the the person responsible for the HR function.
Yeah. I was just wondering if, Jack, do you have an opinion on this?
Ooh, good question.
Well, first of all, I just want to go back to an earlier question, and that is, who does this apply to, or who does this benefit? So it's a requirement under the Rehabilitation Act of 1973, which was a precursor to the Americans with Disabilities Act. And it was intended to provide a remedy for people who are denied access to facilities or programs of an entity that's receiving federal funds. So assuming the town of Foxborough is receiving federal funds, they have to provide some recourse for people who can't access the programs of the town, either because of physical barriers like curb cuts or because of program barriers. So one other way that this can, Mike gave a good list of the ways that this might be implicated, but another that sometimes comes up is access to programs. For example, if a child wanted to participate in a summer program through the rec department, but had some form of disability that required some sort of accommodation, the town would have an obligation to try to accommodate them, to allow them access to the service, to the program. So I just wanted to clarify that. As to who should do it, I have some of the same questions and concerns. I don't think there's any one person with all the skill sets necessary to address curb cuts, recreation programs, discrimination in hiring. I guess what I would say is, I'm not sure it matters who the point person is. Somebody has to be named in the policy. What I assume is that person would then access whatever resources or talent they need to aid them in discharging their responsibilities. So, for example, if a curb cut issue came up, I'm assuming the building commissioner could deal with that just fine. And in fact, probably could deal with everything. But let's say instead it is a hiring discrimination claim. I would assume that the building commissioner would look for some help in investigating that through someone with experience in that, which might be Mike, might be me, whatever. Ultimately, Scott may have to put his name on the opinion, but I'm assuming his opinion would be informed through access to other people with skill sets that aid him. Does that help at all?
I think logically, Jack, it makes a ton of sense to me what you said. I'm just wondering if the policy should sort of spell that out a little bit and make Scott like sort of the director of like conveyance of these things and to appropriate party, and a list is kept or something like that, and people are informed so they're aware of what it is. And so this is specifically saying that in his own sole discretion, he will decide it. I think it says it, something of that nature here somewhere. Shall issue a written decision determining the validity. That makes it appear like everything falls on his head, and that's what drove my question.
Well, and I don't think we should put people's names because people come and go. But I think some language, maybe, Mike, along with what Jack just said, that he will involve the appropriate, people. However you said it, Jack, it was very eloquent. Just language along that line, so it doesn't, to Mike's point, looks like it sits exclusively with Scott. Jack, can you repeat what you said again?
I doubt it. I can only be eloquent.
We're recorded. Great.
I can work with Mike on some language along those lines. I'd want to make sure I put it in the right place in the policy. I was just trying to provide an explanation without actually thinking about how I might phrase that within the policy. But it could be something like with assistance from other town resources as necessary or whatever.
Right, something along that line. So, because if it's something not to do with a curb cut or a building, the building.
You might even want to give some examples of, such as if this happened then you might want to bring
Too much
in.
detail.
Well, I
That's
think-
the problem with docs. I think you just say such will involve the appropriate people. For example, the assistant town manager, the blah,
Yeah.
blah, blah, something like that.
Yeah.
I think there's a couple different goals here. One is letting people who are aggrieved by something that the town has done or failed to do know who they can turn to. So I think it's good to have one contact point, and that's fine the way it's written. But once you then go to apply that policy, and this is really an internal thing, I think, Scott should know that he has resources at his disposal. And I don't know that we need to put that in the policy necessarily, as long as it's clear that who's ever holding that position is made to know that they don't have to go this alone and shouldn't go it alone. So I think if you start adding lots of names and examples of how the point person might turn to others, it might be confusing to the person in the public who just wants to know, who do I call about this problem?
Yeah. So maybe keeping it general, but I think you're right, Tracy, that we should say something.
Well, I think that he will call upon the appropriate resources
Yeah.
to assist for assistance.
Yeah. Something, within the town, because that way at least people will know that it's not just this one person who's.
Right. When I want to share with you some of the other things that are going to go along with the both the OSRP and the ADA application, and so that this is the one piece that we really didn't have at all. So many of the other components we did have. So I'm just going to read you a short list and let you know that number 2 on this list is the policy that you look, or the grievance procedure that you're looking at right now. Number 1 on the list is a letter from the appointing authority or the town regarding the appointment of our ADA coordinator. And we have that. That's something that we do each year with the town clerk's office. So I have that letter, which designates the building commissioner as our ADA coordinator. So him by position and name is the appropriate person. And I put the names actually into this grievance procedure because that's the way they did it at the state, because I think they want to make it as accessible as possible for somebody who has a grievance, that they can either reach out by phone, by email, or ask somebody, hey, how do I find this guy, Scott Shippey, or ask by position. And I think that was the intention of the state. So then number 2 is the policy you're looking at, which is the ADA grievance procedure for townwide policy. Third one is a letter from the ADA coordinator, which would be Scott, attesting that the town's employment practices are in compliance with the ADA Act with respect to numerous functions. So that's where we're kind of throwing a wide net over whether it's curbs or hiring or firing, et cetera. And then our equal employment opportunity policy is number 4, examples of different job notices, which I have gathered, on a number of different postings that we've done. And then number 6, our employee non-harassment cover letter. That's something we're working on right now that we're going to use as part of our onboarding packet with new employees that we're receiving something that we're right now putting together. And then the town's personnel anti-harassment policy, that's something that this board has already reviewed. We have in practice currently. And then the 8th and last thing is Town of Foxborough application for employment that has all the appropriate legal equal opportunity language at the bottom, which I've included in this packet. So when we pull this grievance procedure together with those other 7 things, then we'll have an entire package that will be more robust and I think explain itself a little better.
Great.
That's awesome. Good work. Any other questions, concerns before we?
My only other observation was that the 10th, number 10 here, all negative decisions. I think I understand what you mean by that, but is it this standard language for all the towns that are using negative language and negative decisions? It doesn't define what negative means, I guess. I think I know what it means, but I was just kind of curious that it didn't say something like all, decisions that found a grievance. I assume that's what it means. Found a grievance that was valid of some sort is what was determined there. I just didn't. It didn't read right to me. It didn't feel comfortable.
Sounded very negative.
Well, how do we define negative? The person got shot down, or the person?
Well, that's where I was coming from, Tracy.
Yeah, it's like, what does it mean?
Yeah.
I mean, I suppose this is our, hosting. I could put a footnote at the bottom. What I did is I copied it, as I mentioned, exactly from what the state had. And I looked at several other towns that adopted the same language, but I didn't look at other towns extensively on this. I looked at a sampling of about 4 different communities. I can look a little further and see what other towns have done. Do they define it a little more clearly, or do they put a footnote? Do you have any thoughts on that, Jack?
Well, that one section is the area that troubled me as well. I only had an opportunity to look at this afternoon, and I had the same question about what's the meaning of negative in that context. Is it a decision that's adverse to the person seeking a decision, or is it a decision adverse to the town? Is it a decision where the allegations are not sustained or where they are sustained?
Yeah.
I don't know. So I think that could benefit from some rephrasing. I'd be happy to work with Mike on that, either by helping search for examples from other communities or just refining our own language.
And they have good language under number 7 there, where they refer to it as, dissatisfied with the decision or a corrective action plan.
Mm-hmm.
And I assume that's what they mean by negative decision.
Yeah. Mike Brown.
I made a different thought, Scott. I actually thought it might have meant that we found that we did something inappropriate. I think that it does need a little bit of work, Jack. I think that's great, guys.
Good call, Mike Brown. Good call.
Thank you.
Way to be negative. I'm kidding. No, good catch.
So I'll work with Jack on that and have some more clear language on that specific section ready before I bring it a week from tonight to the selectmen.
Okay. So I'll entertain a motion to make a recommendation on these ADA policies with the 2 issues to be further addressed, defined. What does negative mean? And also the resources that Scott Shippey will the building inspector will call upon, depending on what is brought to his attention. Do I have a motion?
I'll make a motion.
Second?
Second.
Roll call with names. All those in
Scott,
favor?
aye. Scott, aye.
Mike Brown, aye.
Nancy, I.
Tracy, aye. Anything else? Or do I actually nail the adjournment at 6:20 as it's on the schedule?
I believe you've nailed it. You've hit everything that I had on the agenda.
Okay. Anything from any of the members? Jack?
All set. Thank you.
Okay.
Jack, thanks for being here, Jack. You added a lot of value.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Thanks, everybody. Motion to adjourn?
Thank you. Motion to adjourn.
Okay. Yay. Nay. I mean, yay.
Yay.
Have a good night, everybody. Thank
Roll
you.
call, right?
Oh, Tracy, yes.
Scott, yes.
Nancy,
Mike Brown, yes.
We're good. Have a good night, everybody.